Hi, I'm Emily Brumley, and today I'm going to be talking about the gender wage gap and the false stereotypes that surround this issue. So, to start off, what exactly is the wage gap? The wage gap is defined as, quote, the difference between median earnings of men and women relative to the median earnings of men, end quote. What is the wage gap again? We're going to be looking at these infographics. So on the left side, we can see that on average, women only make 79 cents to every man's dollar. And on the right side, we can see that when women are in the same job position as men, they still only earn 98 cents to a man's dollar, even though they are doing the same job. Here in this infographic, we can see both gender and race at play when it comes to getting equal payment, or unequal payment in this case. From the previous slide, we can see that there is a large pay difference between gender as well as race. Black, Pacific Island, and Native American women see the largest difference between pay, making on average, only a little bit above 70 cents to a man's dollar. We can see the smallest gap amongst Asian women who make about 90 cents to the man's dollar. Moving on, I'm sure you're wondering how this applies to Idaho specifically. Well, the wage gap is a very large issue here in Idaho, as it is ranked 46th out of 50 states for the smallest wage gap. According to studies, quote, Idaho women who are employed full-time lose a combined total of nearly $4 billion every year due to the wage gap, end quote. I also see that according to studies, quote, in Idaho, median annual pay for a woman who holds a full-time year-round job is $31,808, while median annual pay for a man who holds a full-time year-round job is $43,264. So even just in Idaho by itself, we can see a huge gap between the annual pay that men and women are receiving. Now looking at it from a national scale. In the United States of America, the wage gap is on average, women get 79 cents to every man's dollar. Current trends show that it'll take North America 165 years to close this gap. In some occupations, women are even receiving billions of dollars less than men. For example, female surgeons make 19 billion less than men annually. And looking at similar studies on a global scale, in 2018, the global wage gap was 32%. And according to current trends, the wage gap will take 108 years to close at a global level. Now, although people may say that the wage gap are closing on global levels, the country with the smallest wage gap was Belgium, with a gap of just 1.1%. And while this number is very small, I think that the wage gap should be 0%. Women should be paid equal as men. There are also a lot of false stereotypes surrounding the wage gap. Many think that the wage gap is attributed to the job choices that women make, or people believe women go into lower paying jobs, decide to have children, or not as educated as men, which causes the wage gap. All of the above reasons that I just listed are wrong and invalid, and I'll tell you why. So, looking first at women's career choices. People say the wage gap exists because of the career choices women make. Even though this is untrue, even if it was, studies show that when men and women are in the same job position, women still only make 98 cents to the man's dollar. So even when women do the same amount of work as men, they're only compensated for 98% of that work. Now, that 2% may seem really small, and many argue that the 2% difference is irrelevant or does not really matter. In reality, it does not matter how much the wage gap is because the wage gap shouldn't even exist in the first place. Moving on to the stereotype that women are less educated and that's why they don't get hired. Yale University conducted a study in which they had resumes with identical experience and educational background. The only difference between these two resumes were the names at the top. One of the resumes had the name John, while the other had the name Jennifer. They found that the male candidate, John, was rated more favorably and offered on average $4,000 more than the female candidate named Jennifer. Now, looking at this Yale study, it shows that even if a woman has the same educational background and experience, her gender alone will keep her from making as much as a man would. Going into even more stereotypes regarding the wage gap. Many say that the wage gap is due to the fact that women like to stay home and take care of the children. Well, looking at that example specifically, when having children, women see that, quote, each child chops 4% off a woman's hourly wages, while men's earnings increase by 6% when they become fathers. Looking at the above example, this shows that women are penalized for becoming a parent while men are rewarded. Many may say that the fact that women go on maternity leave contributes to their pay cut. This blames women for being the carrier of the child, as if it is something she had a choice in. Either way, it should be the same pay for the same work, regardless of their gender or if they have children. We have seen some variety in the wage gap over the years. According to researchers Francine D. Blau and Lawrence M. Kahn, quote, after many years with a stable female-male earnings ratio of roughly 60%, women's relative wages began to rise sharply in the 1980s, with a continued but slower, more uneven rate of increase thereafter. By 2014, women full-time workers earned about 79%. And that is quoted from Blau and Kahn in their 2016 article. So, although we have seen a slight increase over the years, we've been at a standstill since 2010, staying at about 79 cents for every man's dollar. And like I said, although we have increased over the years, we should not be satisfied with that. We should see 0% difference between men and women's pay. A lot of people have spoken up about this issue, one of those people being actress Patricia Arquette, who spoke out against the wage gap at the 2015 Oscar ceremony. In her acceptance speech, she said, quote, we have fought for everyone else's equal rights. It is our time to have wage equality once and for all and equal rights for women in the United States of America. And again, that was Patricia Arquette from her 2015 acceptance speech at the Oscar ceremony. Going more into who Patricia Arquette is as a person, she is a famous Hollywood actress who has been acting for 32 years and has been able to receive 1 Oscar as well as 51 other awards. She has spoken out about the wage gap at the 2015 Oscar ceremony after noticing this gap amongst all jobs in the TV and movie industry. Her speech at the Oscars sparked an uproar for change. Following her speech, the governor at the time, Jerry Brown, signed the California Pay Act, which took effect January 1st, 2016. This act states that, quote, no employer shall pay any individual in the employer's employ at wage rates less than the rates paid to employees of the opposite sex in the same establishment for equal works and jobs. So pretty much, this act is putting in place that companies have to have a viable reason that they're paying women less than men. If they can't provide that, then the pay needs to be equalized. Now, there are many sociological perspectives that try to explain gender inequality. The functionalist perspective states, quote, on the whole, males are physically stronger than women and free of the responsibility of bearing and nursing children. Women, on the other hand, were expected to have many children during their lives and spend much of their adult lives either pregnant or rearing their children. And this comes from Sullivan in 2009. Now looking at the conflict perspective, this perspective states, quote, sociologist Randall Collins in 1971 argued that there is an inherent conflict of interest between men and women and that sex roles can serve as a mechanism by which one group dominates the other. Again, this is from Sullivan in 2009. This is pretty much saying that gender is one way that men can assert dominance over women. This creates a rift between the two groups as women want to be treated the same as a dominant class. Looking at the interactionalist perspective, this refers to gender as a symbol that we give social meaning to, saying, quote, those social meanings are created, communicated, and reinforced as people interact with one another on a daily basis. And again, this is from Sullivan in 2009. This is saying that we as a society have assigned these stereotypes to gender and reinforced them over the years, so it has now become a social norm. Looking more into sociological perspectives on gender equality, I believe that the interactionalist perspective is the most accurate when it comes to explaining gender inequality. The way we sexualize, devalue, and mistreat women can be seen all around us. You can see this in our media as well as the way we speak about women on a daily basis. Our nation's negative feelings towards women can also be seen within the wage gap. The wage gap is a prime example of how men are more valued than women despite them doing the equal amount of work. Now moving on to ways to fix the wage gap. To close the wage gap, the solution is quite simple. Pay men and women equal for their equal work. While this solution is seemingly simple, a lot of people still have not gotten the message. To ensure that they do, we as a society have to raise awareness to this issue and validate the wage gap, as a lot of people are still under the impression that it does not exist. By doing this, we can hopefully close the wage gap once and for all. Here are my scholarly sources that I used to put together this presentation, and I thank you so very much for listening. Thank you, and have a nice day.